Hi, I'm Jen, and this is Listening Decay. Fleet Foxes are a band that I heard quite a bit about growing up, at least up until I was 15 or 16, when Amazon's price algorithm screwed up and gave me the chance to blind buy a copy of the self-titled at $14.50. I'd say it was a worthwhile purchase, and even if I didn't like it, I could have sold it off probably for slightly more money, because at the time I still thought capitalism was a good idea. Naturally, when 2017 rolled around and they announced their album Crack Up, I was really excited, and it ended up surpassing my expectations to such a degree that I still consider it to this day my favorite of their releases. As much as they aren't a band that I go back to every day, whenever I am in the mood for them, I always remember just how much I love them and just how incredible it felt to hear that self-titled for the first time. They're a band completely and intrinsically linked with the weather and with the changing of the seasons. I think of them all year round. That's probably what they were trying to go for. In fact, this time around, with only a day or two's notice, they surprise dropped the album Shore on the 22nd, the autumn equinox, which is a day of the year when night and day are approximately the same length. I think it was intentional that they released it on that day because it's definitely their most autumnal feeling album yet. So I guess even if Father John Misty isn't in the band anymore, they still know how to stick to a gimmick. They've covered a wide range of feelings in terms of what season it is, but I think this time around they've really nailed it down to one particular time of year. And yes, Robin Pecknold is still writing about the sun. That guy can never get enough of the sun. Arrangements on this thing are more gorgeous than ever, particularly on tracks like Featherweight, which is just such a delight. There is far more than enough talent to go around with the performance attributions on this thing, but I've never really been one to discredit something for having a lengthy cast list. The more the merrier, especially with the writing on this. I don't know. Oh, whoops, blade just got knocked down. Because it's written to have such a dense and lush arrangement on every song. You can really tell that no expense was spared. I mean, just listen to those horns. They're on like half the album and they sound just magnificent. The first track sets the mood really nicely, but I think that once the second track, Sunblind, sets in, I really started to feel that warm, fuzzy feeling that I got the first time that I ever listened to a Fleet Foxes record. Takes me back to a happier time in my life. Technically, I want to say this is a new direction, but I think that if you go into this album and you don't like Fleet Foxes, you probably aren't going to come out of this album liking Fleet Foxes. And even more so, if you've heard one song off of this, or maybe just a couple in passing on a playlist, you probably aren't going to be won over by the rest of it. Honestly, if I can knock it for anything, it's really just because it's a little bit samey and homogenous. It almost trends towards self-parody at times, but if you can vibe with it, then you should probably be fine. There isn't a ton of new territory breached, but I think that everyone will probably walk out satisfied if they can get on board with the idea of a new Fleet Foxes record in the first place. Really, to me, it's just Pecknold and the gang putting their best feet forward. Tonally, I'm hesitant to assert this, but it's seemingly happy? I think the themes of this record are far more blissful than looking at the past work from Fleet Foxes would lead you to predict. I mean, especially on something like Helplessness Blues. You could honestly nickname this one like Hopefulness Blues, or Hopefulness Yellows, or Shore. I guess that's probably a better name. Robin also said that this is a partial homage to musicians lost in the last couple of years, especially those more recently, like David Berman and John Prine. And as far as tributes go, I think it's a really naturalistic and fitting one. If they were around to listen to this album today, I think they'd probably be really happy to know that it was dedicated in their names. It's an album about change and coping with those things, but also sort of acceptance all in the same breath. I think that's probably why they went with the autumn theme, because really, what more is autumn about than things changing and you just having to accept it as it goes on? I can circle this all back around by telling you to close your eyes while listening to this record and picture yourself looking out the window at all the falling leaves in your backyard. The changing shades and the trees just stripping away slowly. It's kind of comforting when you think about it. And on that note, I think one of the most agreeable descriptors for this album is that it's very, very warm. I feel profoundly welcomed and comfortable as I settle into its runtime. For just 54 minutes, my biggest problem is no longer rent checks and class disparity. It's lulling into a false sense of security by the album, and then being thrust out by a bouncer that is the finite experience of listening to a record that's less than an hour long. I mean, I even went with a cozy sweater as wardrobe for this video, just because I wanted to visually represent the way that it makes me feel. This record sounds like I look right now, and if you don't like the record, then disregard that. Shore is so alive that you should treat it like a baby and throw a mask on it so that it doesn't catch the virus. Sometimes, an album can smack you upside the head and tear at your neck with its vivacious and animated spirit, but this one proves its worth as a living, breathing creature in a much more humanistic way. The warm hug of understanding, while still managing to have the same uplifting attitude as your best friend with a shoulder to cry on. I'm always going to be welcome to this kind of positivity, and for that reason, and many others, I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 3. Like I said before, I think I probably would have called Crack Up my favorite Fleet Foxes album last week, but right now, that's up for debate. It's definitely too early to tell, only a couple days on from when it came out, but if you ask me in 6 months, don't be surprised if I tell you that Shore is my favorite offering. So, what about you? Am I speaking the truth? Did I miss the mark completely? Leave a comment here, or scream at me on any of these social media platforms. Or just stew in your own frustrations. I look forward to your responses, or lack thereof. Until next time, I'm Jen, and this is Listening Decay.